Hello and welcome to this short video with me, Diagnostik80, and my top 10 Street Fighter games. Following on from the last podcast episode from the Full Force, I thought it would be a cool idea to run down my top 10 Street Fighter games since the franchise kicked off all those years ago in 1987. So let's get on with it, shall we?
Fight! Perfect!
At number 10, I am kicking off with the game that started it all, Street Fighter. In 1987, Capcom released an arcade game designed by Takashi Nishiyama and Hiroshi Matsumoto, launching a franchise that would dominate the beat-em-up landscape for decades. Street Fighter allowed the player to operate Ryu in a fighting tournament around the world against fighters like Joe and Mike. I am not making that up. These two will pop up again in this list at some point, so don't forget those names. What were they again? I am placing it here because as much as it is the forefather of the series, most of the games that have followed it have been far superior for a number of reasons, but of course, I wanted to pay it the respect it deserves here at number 10.
Fight! Perfect!
At 9, I've gone for the rather obscure 1997 release, Street Fighter EX Plus Alpha, for a few reasons. It was an experimental period in the Street Fighter series when Capcom attempted to take the usual 2D brand into the 3D world, even though it's not a fully 3D fighting game in essence, simply 3D characters on a two-dimensional plane. It still had a really innovative design at the time and progressed the brand into the future by developing a number of aspects that make the current games so enjoyable.
Fight! Perfect!
At 8, I've gone with Capcom vs SNK 2. These giants of the computer game world were bitter rivals during the 90s, and nobody in their right mind thought the two companies would ever collaborate in any way. And then this happened. Following the release of Street Fighter 2, SNK hit back with a number of titles that actually included a game, King of Fighters, that eclipsed the popularity of Capcom's best in Japanese arcades. For that reason alone, it was a surprise when Capcom vs SNK was announced, and as well received as that game was, the second instalment pips it to the post in this list thanks to a huge roster of characters, multiple character matchups, and some eye-catching 3D backdrops.
Fight! Perfect!
Number 7, and it's Street Fighter 3 Third Strike. Capcom made fans wait for a third Street Fighter sequel, and in 1997 they got Street Fighter 3 New Generation. Capcom continued to release upgrades of the same game over time, with 1999's Third Strike being the last in line, and once again had pretty much refined it as best they could. Certainly the best of all the third iterations of the franchise, and one that benefited from some time to develop following the previous era. Really tight gameplay and smooth animation made this a real solid addition to the Street Fighter family. What a violent family.
Fight! Perfect!
At 6, it's a classic, and I'll probably get a lot of for this, but it's Street Fighter 2 The World Warrior. An absolute classic, no doubt, but one that was improved on every year with multiple updates and upgrades. And it's now that I can talk about Joe and Mike again. Those guys that appeared in the original Street Fighter make a small cameo in the intro of this game, and now that I've mentioned that, I can move on. It needs to be in this list for so many reasons. It laid the foundations for every fighting game that followed by improving what had come before, and something I haven't commented on yet, but the character design was second to none. New characters have broken through since, of course, but it is this lineup in Street Fighter 2 that everybody knows and recognises. Ryu, Ken, Chun-Li, Guile, Blanka, Zangief, Dalsim, E Honda, Balrog, Vega, Sagat, and M. Bison make up the original cast and have been utilised over and over again in multiple formats outside of the games. Some additional characters have been successful in breaking into that original lineup, like Cammy, Akuma and Fei Long, but it's the OGs that people come back to time and time again, which leads me into...
Fight! Perfect!
Number 5, and Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo. One of my favourite versions of the Street Fighter 2 updates, having all of the things that made the second great, with a bunch of new characters, moves, venues and cutscenes. What is this, Christmas? This game introduced new gameplay mechanics like super combos and air combos, new characters including the secret character Akuma, who would go on to become a recurring fan favourite, and get this, It is the oldest fighting game that still has an active competitive tournament scene throughout the world.
Fight! Perfect!
Number 4, and we are back to the Versus format with Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. Being able to play a game that fuses characters like Ryu and the Hulk together is like being able to eat your favourite dinner and dessert at exactly the same time, but it tastes glorious. It's been straight wins ever since Marvel and Capcom combined forces, and in this newest iteration it works better than ever. Seriously incredible visuals, smooth animation, multiple character tag team formats, tight gameplay, and sensational combo mechanics make this a truly awesome experience. So why is it not higher on the list? I don't know, I clearly haven't thought this through, have I? I kid. It loses a few points for being a versus format, and I would like my top 3 to be pure, unadulterated Street Fighter, thanks.
Fight! Perfect!
At number 3 we have the most recent addition in the Street Fighter family, Street Fighter V Arcade Edition. The newest iteration of the brand and probably at its absolute best, but it loses points for only being available on PS4 and PC, and because it's my list and I own an Xbox One. It only reaches number 3, sorry. Either way, when Street Fighter IV was released in 2008 in arcades and the following year on multiple console platforms, it redefined the franchise with amazing graphics and impressive gameplay mechanics. Once again, the brand has been reinvigorated and completely redesigned. Street Fighter V effectively built on that with new characters, but the decision to keep it as an exclusive for PlayStation 4 and PC has rather soured the whole thing for me, so it doesn't get my top spot.
Fight! Perfect!
As for number 2, we go back to 2003's Hyper Street Fighter 2 Anniversary Edition. Ultimate version for all you classic Street Fighter 2 heads right here. Think Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo but with nitrous attached to the car and Vin Diesel at the helm. It's Ritalin avoided methamphetamine primed super crack on toast. They should have called it Hyper Super Mega Street Fighter 12 EX Plus Alpha Turbo just to cover their bases. This becomes the ultimate classic Street Fighter title in the list down to the fact that it's faster and smoother than all of its predecessors, yet still retains that original aesthetic. Before we see what I've placed at the pinnacle of Mount Shadowloo, let's have a quick rundown from 10 through 2.
Fight! Perfect!
At 10, he started it, mate. It's the one that laid the foundations for this monster of a franchise, Street Fighter. Sort of 3D but not at 9, a precursor to the newest games in the family, Street Fighter EX Plus Alpha. Company vs Company at 8, Capcom vs SNK 2. Third Strike and you're out, or it just goes to 4 after that. Street Fighter 3, Third Strike at 7. Probably the reason I'm doing a list in the first place. The classic game that pushed this property into orbit. Street Fighter 2 The World Warrior at number 6. Blasphemy. When in doubt, use more words. Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo at 5. Should be higher, but it's penalised for stealing. At 4, it's Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. Number 3, and the newest member of Team Anti-Xbox, Street Fighter V Arcade Edition. It's the ultimate classic at 2. Think the original Star Wars movies where the George Lucas additional extras actually improved the final product instead. Hyper Street Fighter 2 Anniversary Edition. And finally, at the very top, we have Ultra Street Fighter 4. Bit of a technicality, but when you consider how this series of games has developed over the years, it is amazing how far it has come. As much as I love the classic games, they have their limitations, and Street Fighter 4 brought so much to the table on its release in 2008. It pumped even more life into these beloved characters, added a ton more, and developed an incredibly complex series of special moves, combos and techniques that blew me away when I first played it. I will always be drawn to that classic style, and will always have the nostalgia of playing the originals in our local amusement arcade, as well as that fateful day I plugged the World Warrior cartridge into my SNES on a school day that was also my birthday and ultimately was also a sick day. And now I will also always have the feeling of seeing those amazing characters displayed in a truly breathtaking way on my Xbox. Looks like I'll be buying a PlayStation 4 then.
Fight! Perfect!
Thanks for watching this video, I hope you enjoyed it. Expect more following our Full Force podcast episodes in the future. Next up is Mortal Kombat, so that should be a fun top 10. I've been Diagnostik80, and you have been fully Shoryukened in the Balrogs.